Sarah Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stood in line with 37 other recruits at the Navy Special Operations Training Facility. The morning sun beat down mercilessly on the concrete yard, but she had learned not to show any sign of discomfort. 3 weeks into the most grueling military training program in the country, she had already seen half the original group quit or get sent home. At 24, Sarah was one of only 3 women in the program, and the constant whispers and snickers from her male counterparts had become as routine as the 4 a.m. wake-up calls. She kept her sleeves rolled down despite the heat, hiding the intricate tattoo that covered her left forearm. It was a decision that had nothing to do with military regulations and everything to do with avoiding questions she wasn't ready to answer. Martinez, drill instructor Thompson's voice cut through the humid air like a whip. Front and center, Sarah jogged to the front of the formation, her boots hitting the pavement with precision. Thompson was a mountain of a man with 20 years of service under his belt, and he had made it clear from day one that he didn't believe women belonged in special operations. "You think you can keep up today, Martinez?" Thompson's face was inches from hers, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Because today, we're separating the warriors from the wannabes." "Yes, sir." Sarah's response was sharp and confident, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Behind her, she heard Johnson, a cocky recruit from Texas, mutter to his buddy, "$20 says she taps out before lunch." The comment earned a few suppressed chuckles from the group. Thompson's eyes narrowed. "Something funny back there, Johnson?" "No, sir. Just excited for today's training, sir." "Good. Because today you're all going to learn what real pain feels like." Thompson's smile was predatory. "We're starting with underwater demolition simulation. Full gear, 60-pound packs, and you'll be holding your breath longer than you ever thought possible." Sarah's stomach tightened. Swimming had never been her strongest skill, and she knew Thompson was aware of this fact. He had been systematically targeting her weaknesses for weeks, pushing her harder than anyone else in the program. The group moved to the training pool, a massive concrete basin filled with murky water that simulated real combat conditions. Sarah strapped on her gear, feeling the familiar weight settle across her shoulders. The waterproof pack contained everything from fake explosives to communication equipment, making movement awkward and exhausting. "Listen up," Thompson's voice echoed off the walls. "You'll swim to the bottom, plant your charges on the mock ship hull, and swim back. Simple. But you do it on one breath, and if you surface early, you're out of the program. Martinez, you're up first." Sarah stepped to the edge of the pool, her mind racing through the breathing techniques she had practiced countless times. She could feel the eyes of every recruit on her, waiting for her to fail. Johnson's smirk was particularly infuriating. "Scare, Martinez," Johnson called out, earning another round of snickers. "Maybe you should have stayed in the kitchen." Sarah ignored the comment, focusing instead on the task ahead. She had grown up poor in East Los Angeles, the daughter of a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. She had joined the military not just to serve her country, but to prove that her background didn't define her limits. Every challenge was another step toward the life she had always dreamed of. She took a deep breath and dove into the pool. The water was shockingly cold, and the weight of her pack immediately tried to drag her down faster than she wanted. Sarah fought against the artificial current created by underwater jets, her lungs already beginning to burn as she descended toward the mock ship hull 20 feet below. The target was a section of metal plating with magnetic attachment points for the training explosives. Sarah's fingers worked quickly, despite the water resistance and the growing pressure in her chest. She could see Thompson's boots at the edge of the pool above, waiting for her to surface and defeat. Her lungs screamed for oxygen, and dark spots began to dance at the edges of her vision. This was the moment when most recruits surfaced, gasping and defeated. But Sarah thought about her mother, working the night shift at the factory, coming home with bandaged fingers and an aching back, never complaining, never giving up. She finished attaching the last explosive and pushed off from the bottom with everything she had left. Sarah broke the surface just as her vision started to tunnel, gasping quietly as she treaded water. She had done it, but barely. Thompson's expression was unreadable as he marked something on his clipboard. Time, 47 seconds. Acceptable. He looked up at the next recruit. Johnson, you're up. As Sarah hauled herself out of the pool, water streaming from her gear, she caught Johnson's eye. His confident smirk had faded slightly. The challenge in his gaze was unmistakable. Johnson dove with unnecessary flourish, clearly trying to show off. Sarah watched as he descended quickly, too quickly, burning oxygen with wasted movement. She could see him struggling with the equipment at the bottom, his movements becoming more frantic as the seconds ticked by. At 55 seconds, Johnson shot to the surface like a cork, gasping and thrashing. Thompson didn't even need to look at his stopwatch. Johnson, pack your gear. You're done. The pool deck fell silent except for Johnson's ragged breathing. He looked around desperately, as if searching for someone to blame, his eyes finally settling on Sarah. This is bullshit. Johnson spat, water dripping from his face. If she can do it, anyone can do it. There's no way she's that good. Johnson. Thompson's voice was deadly quiet. Are you questioning my evaluation? I'm just saying, sir, that maybe some people are getting special treatment. Maybe some people have advantages the rest of us don't know about. Sarah felt her cheeks burn with anger and humiliation. Even when she succeeded, it was never good enough. There was always some excuse, some reason why her accomplishments didn't count. Martinez, Thompson said, his voice cutting through the tension. Drop and give me 50 push-ups? Now, sir. Sarah was confused. She hadn't done anything wrong. You heard me. 50 push-ups for creating a disturbance. Sarah's jaw tightened, but she dropped to the wet concrete without argument. As she began counting out push-ups, she could hear Johnson gathering his gear and muttering under his breath about unfair advantages and political correctness ruining the military. The push-ups were humiliating, especially since everyone knew she hadn't done anything to deserve them. But Sarah completed every single one, her voice strong and clear as she counted off each repetition. 48, 49, 50, sir. She stood up, her uniform soaked and muddy but her back straight and her head high. Thompson studied her for a long moment, and Sarah could have sworn she saw a flicker of something that might have been respect in his eyes. Williams, you're up next, Thompson called to another recruit. As the training continued, Sarah found herself thinking about the tattoo hidden beneath her sleeve. It was a memorial piece, intricate and beautiful, honoring someone who had died serving their country. But it was also a secret she wasn't ready to share, especially not with people who already questioned her right to be there. The rest of the day passed in a blur of obstacle courses, weapons training, and endless physical challenges. Sarah pushed herself harder than ever, determined to prove that Johnson's failure had nothing to do with her success. By the time evening chow was called, she was exhausted but satisfied. In the mess hall, she sat with the two other women in the program, Lisa Chun and Amanda Rodriguez. They had formed an unofficial alliance, supporting each other through the worst of the training and the constant scrutiny from their male counterparts. Did you see Thompson's face when Johnson started making excuses? Lisa whispered, picking at her military-issued meatloaf. I thought he was going to throw him in the pool himself. Good riddance, Amanda muttered. Guy was a walking harassment case waiting to happen. Sarah pushed her food around her plate, not really hungry despite the day's exertion. There'll be others like him. There always are. Maybe, Lisa said, but we're still here. That counts for something. Across the mess hall, Sarah noticed several recruits staring in their direction, their conversations stopping when they realized they were being observed. The attention made her skin crawl, but she had learned to endure it. That night, as Sarah lay in her narrow bunk listening to the sounds of 36 other people trying to sleep in the same barracks, she thought about how far she had come. 3 weeks ago, she had been just another recruit with something to prove. Now, she was becoming someone different, someone stronger. She rolled up her sleeve in the darkness and traced the outline of her tattoo with one finger. The memorial piece covered her entire forearm, a masterwork of black and gray ink that told a story she wasn't ready to share. But someday, when the time was right, she would show the world exactly what she was fighting for. Thunder rumbled in the distance, promising another day of rain and mud. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to rest, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests of her resolve. She had survived 3 weeks of hell, but the hardest part was still to come. In the bunk next to her, she could hear Lisa tossing and turning, probably having the same thoughts. They were all walking a tightrope, one mistake away from being sent home in disgrace. But Sarah had no intention of giving up. She had come too far and sacrificed too much to quit now. The tattoo on her arm was more than just ink and memories. It was a promise, a commitment to honor someone who would never have the chance to prove themselves the way Sarah was proving herself now. Every push-up, every obstacle course, every underwater challenge was a step closer to fulfilling that promise. As she finally drifted off to sleep, Sarah Martinez was already planning how to tackle tomorrow's challenges. She didn't know that in just a few days, everything would change, and the secret hidden beneath her sleeve would transform from a source of private motivation into something that would shake the entire training program to its core. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, turning the training grounds into a muddy nightmare that clung to everything and made every exercise twice as difficult. Sarah Martinez pushed through her morning 5-mile run, her boots squelching with each step as she maintained pace with the dwindling group of recruits who remained in the program. They were down to 22 people now, and the pressure was mounting with each passing day. The instructors had made it clear that only the top 12 would advance to the final phase of training, which meant more than half of the remaining recruits would be going home soon. Sarah's breathing was steady despite the grueling pace, a testament to the conditioning she had built over the past 5 weeks. Behind her, she could hear the labored breathing of Martinez, no relation, despite sharing a last name, a stocky recruit from Nevada who had been struggling with the running portions of the program. "Pick it up, people!" Drill instructor Thompson's voice carried through the rain from his position in the lead truck. "This isn't a casual jog through the park. Move like your lives depend on it." As they rounded the final corner toward the barracks, Sarah noticed a black SUV parked near the administrative building. It was unusual to see civilian vehicles on the base, especially during training hours. The windows were tinted, and the government plates suggested someone important was paying a visit. The run concluded at the obstacle course, where the recruits were immediately ordered to begin their daily navigation through the complex series of barriers, walls, and challenges that had broken so many others before them. Sarah approached the first obstacle, a 12-foot wall that required both strength and technique to overcome efficiently. She had perfected her technique over weeks of practice, using her momentum and grip strength to pull herself over quickly. As she dropped down on the other side, she heard someone behind her curse loudly as they failed to clear the wall on their first attempt. "Martinez!" Thompson's voice called out as she moved toward the rope climb. "Hold position." Sarah stopped immediately, standing at attention as Thompson approached with another man she didn't recognize. The stranger was tall and lean, with graying hair and the kind of bearing that suggested high rank and long service. His uniform was immaculate despite the rain, and Sarah noticed the distinctive trident insignia that marked him as a Navy SEAL. "This is the recruit I was telling you about, Commander," Thompson said, his tone noticeably more respectful than usual. "Martinez, this is Commander Harrison." "Sir." Sarah snapped to attention, her mind racing as she wondered what she might have done to attract the attention of a SEAL commander. Commander Harrison studied her with sharp blue eyes that seemed to take in every detail. "At ease, Martinez. I've been reviewing your performance records. Impressive work on the underwater demolition exercises." "Thank you, sir. I understand you've had some challenges with certain members of your training class," Harrison continued, his tone casual, but his gaze intense. "How are you handling the pressure?" Sarah chose her words carefully. I'm focused on completing the training to the best of my ability, sir. I don't let distractions interfere with my performance. Harrison nodded slowly. Good answer. Thompson tells me you're one of the top performers in the program. That's quite an achievement, considering the competition. The recruit has shown exceptional determination, Thompson added, and Sarah was surprised to hear what sounded like genuine praise in his voice. She's consistently outperformed expectations. I'd like to observe the rest of today's training, Harrison said. Don't let me interfere with your normal routine. As the two officers moved away to continue their conversation, Sarah completed the obstacle course with renewed focus. She could feel Harrison's eyes on her as she navigated each challenge, and she was determined to give him no reason to doubt her capabilities. The rope climb was her strongest event, and she attacked it with the aggressive technique that had become her trademark. Hand over hand, she hauled herself up the 30-foot rope in record time, ignoring the burning in her shoulders and forearms. At the top, she slapped the bell with authority before controlling her descent. Outstanding, she heard Harrison comment to Thompson. Textbook technique. The rest of the obstacle course passed in a blur of mud, sweat, and determination. Sarah finished with the second-best time of the day, beaten only by Rodriguez, a former college athlete who had been dominating the physical challenges since day one. As the group moved to the next training evolution, Sarah noticed that Harrison continued to observe, taking notes, and occasionally asking Thompson questions. Whatever was happening, it felt significant in a way that made her both nervous and excited. The afternoon brought weapons training, where the recruits practiced marksmanship with various firearms under simulated combat conditions. Sarah had always been a natural shot, a skill she had developed during childhood hunting trips with her uncle in the mountains outside Los Angeles. Martinez, you're up for the advanced course, Thompson announced as they reached the firing range. Commander Harrison wants to see how you handle the stress fire scenarios. The advanced course was typically reserved for recruits who had already proven themselves in basic marksmanship. It involved moving through a series of positions while engaging multiple targets under time pressure, simulating the chaos of actual combat. Sarah checked her weapon, a standard-issue rifle that felt comfortable and familiar in her hands. She had learned to respect firearms from an early age, understanding both their power and their responsibility. As she moved into position, she could see Harrison watching intently from the observation area. Begin. Thompson's command started the exercise. Sarah moved through the course like a dancer, flowing from position to position while engaging targets with precision and speed. Her shots rang out in a steady rhythm, each round finding its mark with mechanical accuracy. She used cover effectively, reloaded smoothly, and maintained perfect trigger discipline throughout the exercise. When the buzzer sounded to end the course, Sarah had achieved a perfect score with a time that would have been respectable for an experienced operator, let alone a recruit still in training. Exceptional shooting, Harrison commented to Thompson, his voice carrying clear approval. Where did she learn to shoot like that? Self-taught, according to her file, Thompson replied. Grew up hunting with family in California. As Sarah unloaded her weapon and prepared to move to the next station, she noticed several other recruits watching her with a mixture of respect and resentment. Her success was becoming harder for them to ignore or dismiss, and she could see the frustration building in some faces. The final evolution of the day was combat swimming, where recruits had to navigate an underwater obstacle course while carrying full gear. This was Sarah's weakest area, and she knew that Harrison's presence would make any struggle more visible and potentially more damaging. The water was cold and murky, with artificial currents designed to disorient and exhaust the swimmers. Sarah entered the water with practiced calm, fighting down the anxiety that always accompanied these underwater challenges. The course required her to swim through a series of submerged barriers while carrying a 40-pound pack and simulated weapon. Her lungs burned as she navigated the obstacles, her movements careful and controlled despite the growing oxygen debt. Halfway through the course, Sarah's pack caught on one of the barriers, threatening to trap her underwater. For a moment, panic fluttered at the edges of her consciousness. This was exactly the kind of situation where recruits made fatal mistakes, either by rushing and making errors or by giving up entirely. Instead, Sarah forced herself to remain calm, working methodically to free the caught strap while precious seconds ticked away. Her vision began to narrow as her oxygen ran low, but she refused to surface until the task was complete. When she finally emerged from the water, gasping but successful, she found Harrison waiting at the edge of the pool with an expression she couldn't read. "Smooth work down there," he said quietly. "I saw what happened with your pack. Most people would have panicked." "Thank you, sir," Sarah managed between breaths. "Where did you learn to stay that calm under pressure?" The question caught Sarah off guard. The honest answer involved memories she wasn't ready to share, experiences that had taught her that panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. Instead, she gave a safer response. "Practice, sir, and good training from the instructors here." Harrison studied her for a long moment, and Sarah had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see through her careful answer to the truth underneath. As the day's training concluded, Sarah found herself wondering about Harrison's visit and his particular interest in her performance. It was rare for SEAL commanders to spend this much time observing recruit training, and she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his presence than routine inspection. That evening, as the recruits cleaned their gear and prepared for the next day's challenges, Sarah overheard a conversation that made her stomach drop. "I heard Commander Harrison is looking for recruits for a special assignment," one of the remaining candidates whispered to his bunkmate. "Something about advanced training for exceptional performers." "Think Martinez has a shot?" the other recruit replied. "She's been killing it lately." "Maybe, but there's probably more to selection than just performance. Background checks, security clearances, the whole 9 yards. Sarah's blood ran cold. Background checks meant investigations, and investigations meant questions about her past that she wasn't prepared to answer. The tattoo on her arm suddenly felt like a beacon, marking her with a secret that could destroy everything she had worked for. As she lay in her bunk that night, listening to the rain continue its relentless assault on the barracks roof, Sarah realized that her success might have attracted exactly the kind of attention she had been trying to avoid. Commander Harrison's interest could be the opportunity of a lifetime or the beginning of the end of her military career. She pulled her sleeve down to cover the tattoo completely, as if the fabric could somehow protect her from the scrutiny that was coming. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time since arriving at the training facility, Sarah feared that her biggest obstacle might not be physical or mental conditioning. It might be the truth itself. The accident happened during week 7 of training, when the remaining 15 recruits were attempting their most dangerous exercise yet. Fast rope insertion from a helicopter hovering 60 feet above a simulated combat zone. Sarah Martinez had completed the exercise successfully, her boots hitting the ground with practiced precision as she rolled to absorb the impact and immediately took up a defensive position. She was providing security for the landing zone when she heard the sickening thud behind her. Rodriguez had lost his grip on the rope 20 feet from the ground, falling hard onto the concrete training pad. He wasn't moving. "Man down! Man down!" Sarah shouted, abandoning her position to rush toward her fallen teammate. Rodriguez was unconscious, his left leg twisted at an unnatural angle, blood pooling beneath his head. Without thinking, Sarah dropped to her knees beside him and immediately began assessing his injuries. Her hands moved with surprising confidence, checking his pulse, examining the head wound, and carefully stabilizing his neck to prevent further damage. "Don't move him," she called out to the other recruits who were gathering around. "Possible spinal injury. We need to keep him still until medical arrives." Sarah applied direct pressure to the head wound with one hand while using the other to check Rodriguez's pupils for signs of serious brain trauma. Her movements were precise and professional, displaying medical knowledge that went far beyond the basic first aid training all recruits received. "How do you know all this?" asked Chun, one of the remaining female recruits, as she watched Sarah work. "Basic medical training," Sarah replied tersely, her focus entirely on Rodriguez. But that wasn't the whole truth, and several people seemed to notice the gap between her claimed knowledge and her actual skill level. Within minutes, the base medical team arrived and took over Rodriguez's care. As they loaded him onto a stretcher, the lead medic looked at Sarah with professional interest. "Good work," he said quietly. "Clean assessment, proper stabilization. Where'd you train?" "Just what they taught us here," Sarah replied, but the medic's expression suggested he didn't quite believe her. The training day was called off early due to the accident, giving the remaining recruits unexpected free time that most of them spent in worried silence. Rodriguez had been well-liked and respected, one of the strongest performers in the program. His injury was a stark reminder of how quickly everything could change. That evening, Sarah was summoned to the administrative building for what she was told was a routine check-in with the training staff. But when she arrived at the designated office, she found not only drill instructor Thompson waiting for her, but also Commander Harrison and a woman in civilian clothes who introduced herself as Agent Patricia Mills from Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as she took the seat they indicated, trying to read the expressions on their faces for clues about what was happening. "Relax, Martinez," Commander Harrison said, though his tone was serious. "You're not in any trouble. We wanted to discuss your performance today during the medical emergency." "Sir," Agent Mills leaned forward, consulting a tablet. "Your response to Rodriguez's injury was exemplary, but it also raised some questions. The base medic reported that your knowledge and technique were far more advanced than what recruits typically learn in basic training." Sarah felt sweat beginning to form on her forehead, despite the air conditioning. "I've always been interested in emergency medicine, ma'am. I've done some reading on my own time. Reading doesn't typically produce the kind of muscle memory we observe today," Harrison said quietly. "Your assessment was textbook quality, performed under pressure. That level of competence usually requires hands-on training." The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning system. Sarah realized that she was at a crossroads, one that could determine not only her future in the program, but potentially her entire military career. These people weren't going to accept vague answers much longer. Agent Mills touched her tablet screen and turned it towards Sarah. "We've been conducting enhanced background checks on all recruits being considered for advanced training. During that process, some inconsistencies emerged in your file." Sarah's mouth went dry. "What kind of inconsistencies?" "For starters," Mills continued, "you listed your previous employment as retail and food service, but we found records indicating you worked as an EMT in Los Angeles for 2 years before enlisting. Care to explain why you omitted that information?" The truth hit Sarah like a physical blow. They knew. Somehow, despite all her careful preparation, they had uncovered the parts of her past she had tried to keep hidden. Her mind raced through possible responses, but she realized that continued deception would only make things worse. "I didn't think it was relevant," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Emergency medical experience isn't relevant to special operations training?" Harrison's eyebrows rose. "That's an interesting perspective. Why did you hide your medical background?" Mills asked, her tone professional but not unkind. "EMT certification is an asset, not a liability." Sarah stared at her hands, knowing that the moment of truth had finally arrived. The weight of the secret she had been carrying for months felt overwhelming, pressing down on her like a physical force. "Because of how I lost the job," she said quietly. The three officials exchanged glances, and Thompson leaned forward in his chair. "Explain." Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that what she said next would either destroy her chances or finally free her from the burden she had been carrying. "I was fired for refusing to treat a patient." "Refused to treat a patient?" Mills's voice was sharp with surprise. "That's grounds for losing certification, not just employment." "The patient was my brother," Sarah said, her voice breaking slightly. "Miguel Martinez, Marine Corps Lance Corporal. He had been wounded in Afghanistan, medically discharged, struggling with PTSD and addiction. One night, he overdosed on heroin in an alley downtown. I was on the ambulance crew that responded. The room was completely silent now, the weight of her confession hanging in the air like a physical presence. I couldn't do it, Sarah continued, tears beginning to flow down her cheeks. I couldn't be professional and detached with my own brother lying there dying. I froze up completely. My partner had to take over while I fell apart. Miguel died on the way to the hospital. Harrison's expression had softened, though he remained silent. After that, I couldn't be an EMT anymore, Sarah said. Every call reminded me of that night, of how I failed when it mattered most. So I quit before they could fire me, took dead-end jobs, tried to figure out how to live with what I'd done. Agent Mills made notes on her tablet. The military records show Lance Corporal Martinez died of a drug overdose in Los Angeles 18 months ago. But they don't mention your involvement in the emergency response. I used a different name on the EMT certification, Sarah admitted. Sarah Rodriguez, my mother's maiden name. I was trying to keep some distance between my military family and my civilian job. I never thought. She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. You never thought you'd end up in a position where that background would matter, Harrison completed for her. Yes, sir. Thompson, who had been quiet throughout the confession, finally spoke. Is that why you joined the Navy? Guilt over your brother's death. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing camouflage paint across her cheek. Partly. Miguel always talked about wanting to be a SEAL, but he never got the chance. I thought maybe I could honor his memory by finishing what he started. And the tattoo? Mills asked quietly. Sarah's eyes widened in shock. How did you? Enhanced background checks are very thorough, Mills explained. We found photos from Miguel's memorial service. You were wearing short sleeves in several pictures. With trembling hands, Sarah rolled up her left sleeve, revealing the intricate memorial tattoo that covered her forearm. It was a stunning piece of artwork depicting Miguel in his dress uniform, surrounded by symbols of military service and sacrifice. At the bottom, in elegant script, were the words, "Until Valhalla, brother." Harrison studied the tattoo for a long moment, his expression unreadable. This is military-quality artwork. Professional grade. Miguel's best friend is a tattoo artist, Sarah explained. He did it for free as a memorial. It took 6 sessions to complete. Why didn't you just tell the truth from the beginning? Thompson asked. Sarah laughed bitterly. Because I was afraid you'd see me as damaged goods. A washout EMT whose brother was a drug addict. I thought if I could just prove myself through performance, my past wouldn't matter. Agent Mills closed her tablet and leaned back at her chair. Sarah, I need you to understand something. Lying on military documents is a serious offense. Under normal circumstances, this would be grounds for immediate dismissal from the program. Sarah's heart sank. After everything she had accomplished, everything she had endured, it was going to end because of secrets and shame. But Commander Harrison held up a hand. However, he continued, these are not normal circumstances. Your performance in this program has been exceptional, and your medical background actually makes you more valuable, not less. Sir, the advanced training I mentioned is for a specialized unit that operates in high-risk environments where medical emergencies are common. EMT certification, even lab certification, is exactly the kind of background we're looking for. Sarah stared at him in disbelief. You're not dismissing me from the program? On the contrary, Harrison smiled for the first time since she had met him. We're offering you a spot in the most elite training pipeline the Navy has. But first, you need to understand something about your brother's death. He pulled out a file folder and opened it on the desk. We did our own investigation into Lance Corporal Miguel Martinez. Did you know that he was awarded a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star for his actions in Afghanistan? Yes, sir. The medals are on his grave. Did you know that he saved 4 fellow Marines' lives before he was wounded? Miguel never talked about what happened over there. Harrison turned a page in the file. According to the after-action reports, your brother single-handedly held off an enemy assault for 20 minutes while calling an evacuation for wounded teammates. He was shot 3 times, but continued fighting until help arrived. Sarah's vision blurred with fresh tears. The point is, Harrison continued gently. Miguel was a hero who struggled with demons that had nothing to do with his courage or character. His death was tragic, but it doesn't diminish what he accomplished or who he was. And it certainly doesn't reflect poorly on you. Your freeze-up response was completely normal, Agent Mills added. Family members shouldn't be expected to provide emergency care to their loved ones. That's why most medical protocols specifically prohibit it. Thompson nodded agreement. You've been carrying guilt that isn't yours to carry, Martinez. Your brother would be proud of what you've accomplished here. Sarah felt something break loose inside her chest, a knot of shame and grief that had been choking her for 18 months. For the first time since Miguel's death, she felt like she could breathe freely. So what happens now? She asked. Commander Harrison smiled. Now you finish this program, and then you begin the hardest training the military has to offer. Because we're going to teach you to be the kind of operator your brother always dreamed of becoming. And Sarah, Agent Mills added, using her first name for the first time, no more secrets. The people you'll be working with need to trust you completely, and that trust starts with honesty about who you are and where you come from. Sarah looked down at her exposed tattoo, the memorial to her brother that she had hidden for so long. Yes, ma'am. No more secrets. As she left the administrative building that night, Sarah Martinez felt like a different person than the one who had arrived months ago. The weight of shame had been replaced by a sense of purpose and possibility. She still had the hardest challenges ahead of her, but for the first time, she wasn't facing them alone. Miguel's memory would no longer be a burden to hide, but a source of strength to draw upon. And the tattoo on her arm would be a visible reminder of the sacrifice and honor that had brought her to this moment. The mocking and doubt from her fellow recruits seemed insignificant now. She had survived the ultimate test, the confrontation with her own past, and the decision to trust others with her truth. Everything else was just training. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Sarah Martinez was ready to face them with the full truth of who she was and who she was becoming. The SEAL commander had seen her tattoo, understood her story, and still chosen her for something greater than she had ever imagined possible. The transformation from broken EMT to elite warrior was nearly complete.